So we have our application with the form. Where's the form? Where's the form? Here's the form. We have our application with the form, which contains a linear layout, which is contained within the scroll view. Pretty good. And here we have one edit text, one extra edit text, one extra edit text, and one extra edit text. The last one, which is a text email address, the rating bar for my students, and then lastly, the button itself. And whenever we click the button save, nothing happens. Okay, so we need to do something. We already learned how to bind some objects from the view to the component itself, to the activity. So we learned when we created the student list activity how to locate a component from our view. We used the find view by ID method and used the ID of that element to locate it. So if we go back to the activity student form, we can give an ID for this button here. So which ID should I give to it? Let me just add a random ID. For example, at plus, so I'm creating an ID. So the ID will be called save a new student, please. Is it a good ID? Looks so, but it doesn't follow any standard practice here. It's just like a random ID that I chose. That's not good. Usually we use the name of the activity, for example, student form, and then we add some suffix to it. So we append the student form prefix to what this button is doing, to what this button is responsible for. So in this case, I'm gonna use please create the ID, which is called student form. That's the prefix, that's the name of my activity that is connected to this layout. And then student form, what is it going to do? Save. Student form save. That's the name of the ID that I'm creating. So if I use this ID here, student form save, what happens is if I go back to my activity, I can find my view by ID. And what is the name of the ID? r.ids dot ID, just singular, but that's where the IDs are. And here I have my ID, students form save. Student form, sorry, student singular, form save. That's the name of my little guy. And remember, I just said, okay, so we have one kind of standard that we follow all over our application. Why? Because it will be easier to locate things. I know that this student form save is under the student form layout. So here we have activity student form, and it's here that I'm going to find the student form save button. So if I go back here to our student list activity, when I see here activity student list, that's okay, that's the name of the file. And if we see the ID that we have created for our list, it's called students list. It's in plural. It's not following the same standard as here. So can I create the ID which is called just student list? Yes, I can come back here to the student list. And then I'll say that the student list is called student list, which is the prefix. It's the prefix. It's just the name of the activity. And within this list, this is the list of students. Sorry, this is the list of students. So it seems a kind of bit ugly, but it's following a pattern. And that's the most standard, the most important thing. Because if we don't follow a pattern, it's going to be a mess. Pretty soon you have all kinds of IDs and you have no idea where they are coming from, what they are related to, and so on. So here we know that the first part of an ID relates to in which layout is it located, and the second part of an ID relates to what is it within that layout. So in our case, student list layout, the list itself. So let's go back to the code, and you see here we have the r.id dot student list. This is the guy that we want, and I can try to run our code just to check that it's compiling and everything is okay, and we were able to run this code here. Find view by ID, student form save. It's not going to do anything special. Just find the object for me and do nothing. Nothing funny, nothing fancy so far. So what we want to do is, when we find this button here, so notice that the button also is a view itself. Everything that is drawable is a view here. So the button itself is a view. So when it got here access, got hold to this reference, to this object, I can get this guy here as a button. So I'm going to call this variable here save button, which type is it? It's a type called button. So whenever we invoke find by view ID, we need to do the cast. So let's cast it to button. And it's complaining that this guy here, Android widget button, was not imported. So let's import it. I'm hitting Alt return on Mac. So just Control return on Windows, and it's imported here. The button is here. So here I have button, save button equals button, and so on. Here I have my button. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to tell my save button, please, whenever someone clicks, listen to me, do as I say. So set on click listener. Listen to me whenever I'm here listening. Whenever something happens, tell me because I'm going to do something. So set on click listener, and then we'll choose this one. And then we need to pass as an argument a click listener. So let's create a click listener. New click on click listener. This is the on click listener. It's going to create the on click listener for us. And here, as a method within this object, this is the object, or this is a reference to the object, and this is the method which is going to be invoked whenever someone clicks on our button. What do I want to do now? I want just to show a message. Congratulations, the data was saved. Just something like that, just to say that the data was saved. Let's do that. To do that, we use a component on Android, which is called the toaster. Toast, Android widget, toast, dot, make text. That's what we are going to do. So the context for this toast is the activity itself. So I can use this, right? This is the activity. No, this is not the activity. Remember, I just said, and that was important, that this is an object. And this is another object. This is external object, and this is the internal object. And that's one of the few reasons why I hate using anonymous class. And there's several reasons why people shouldn't be using anonymous class as they use it, but that's just one of the reasons, and we're going to improve our code later on. We're going to keep improving our code, keep improving. That's one of the reasons, because it gets more complex and more ugly and more harder to maintain and so on. So in this case here, I'm saying, okay, I need one activity, but that's not the internal activity. That's not the view on click listener object. It's the student form activity, this. That's the this I'm talking about. That's the object, the activity. So what I type in here is the student form activity dot this. It's a pretty ugly syntax, which is Java syntax for referencing the other class when you are working in a nested class, which is our case here. So you see that it's something that people shouldn't be doing in real life, but you see that a lot, and that's what I'm doing here, because you're going to see this a lot in all tutorials, in all examples that you're going to see all over the world. But you can see that it gets a little bit harder to understand what's going on. This object has a fair reference to the external object, and what you're doing is using this external reference here to pass it to a method which is called make text. It gets complex to understand those things. Those are things that are required only in the second Java certification, not on the first one, on the second certification. So those are things that, to be quite really understood, you should understand more things and so on. So, but people do it a lot, so that's what I'm going to do, and then we refactor this code and improve it. Okay, hold on. Okay, so this is the activity, or activity, and then please tell me the name, the message that we want to show the user. In our case, the message that we want to say is student was created. That's it. I'm happy with that. And I'm gonna say that the type of message that we are showing is the length short. Is a short toast. It's a short one. That's enough for me. Finally, I'm gonna say, please show this toast. So we ask for it to be shown. So actually what we are doing here is creating an object, and then we are telling, okay, please show this toast to the end user whenever you click the save button. Let's try it. I'm gonna save and run our code. Reload it. Let's just add some simple name here and click save. So I click save and nothing happens. Why is it so? Because it did not reload my application again. Remember that whenever you click run, you are trying to hot swap the code that's running in your emulator. Why? Because you don't want to keep reloading the entire application all the time. Sometimes the changes you do are simple changes, like changing just one line here, or just changing one string, and you want just to swap this code and keep running the application as it is, because you're at some point of the application that you don't want to start all over again. So sometimes hot swapping the code will work, sometimes it will fail, and it will try to tell you here whenever you click run. So I clicked run and I kept doing things, so the message here disappeared. So whenever you click run, you have to pay attention if it was able to hot swap the code or not. It shows some message here. But always pay attention to, if your change doesn't work as properly, it's probably because it did not reload the application. And even if you close the application, so you click here and try to close the application, be sure to change something in your code again, because you need to be sure that this code here was recompiled and put into the build, the APK file again, and set up on the device again. So be sure to have some change to force the build to regenerate something. So there are several ways to do it, to do a clean build, or to just hit an enter here somewhere as I did, and then just hit run, because it will rebuild and put the new APK file into the cell phone, and then restart the new application. And then now if I type in my name and hit save, then it shows the toast here, student was created, and it goes away. And then it shows student was created, and it goes away. And it shows student was created, and it goes away. And it keeps going on. So the important thing here about this hot swap is that some specific types of code, as with inner classes, nested classes, in anonymous cases, they keep a reference to the external object, and that makes it more complex to reload, to swap this kind of code. So I personally try to avoid internal classes and nested classes and anonymous classes as much as I can, to make it easier to reload my code and see everything working as much as possible, of course. And we will see how to improve our code little by little. I just want to improve one little thing here right now, one small thing, which is this line of code. It says button, save button, button. How many times does it says button here? 1, 2, 3 times. And then it says here button again. It says button so many times, and actually button is the type of our object. So the language requires our variables to be typed. So here I have to say button, and that's good enough. I like this type of languages. I like Java, C#, and so on. So I'm fond of it, but I'm already saying that this variable is of the type button. So why am I repeating this information in the name of the variable? That's because a lot of people come from a background where the language did not enforce the type to be declared. It could be declared as var save button. So var didn't say anything about the type. So you used the name of the variable to help you understand what the variable was referencing. In our case, in our language, the language itself tells us that we must say the type of the variable here. So we don't need the name of the variable to repeat this information, which clutters our code and makes it more harder to learn, to read. It's just more complex to read. So I'll just remove here. This is just the button save. And whenever someone clicks on save, I'm happy with it. I know it seems like a small thing, but notice if every one of your variables repeats the type, and repeats its type, it gets more cluttered, more cluttered, more cluttered. And it gets harder and harder for you to read and understand your code. So try to keep that in mind, that good practice, that in this language and in several other languages where the variables must be declared with their type, you do not need to repeat the name of the type in the variable name. Don't do it just because other people do it, because in their background they came from languages where that was supposed to be done. If the variable name is clear enough, that's concise and clear enough for you, so concise means clear enough, for you, that's good enough. So button save, for me, that's good enough. It's clear. That's a small refactor that makes a big change whenever your code is growing and growing and growing. We also spoke about the standards of the student form save and the student list in our other activity. So using the activity name as a pattern to identify identities, to identify IDs. Where is this ID coming from? It's coming from the student list layout. It's coming from the student form layout. So the ID tells you where this element can be found. So those patterns, those two good practices is something that we want to keep in mind. And we're going to improve our code little by little, as I told you. Of course, so just summing up what we have seen, we were able to add the text, the email field, we were able to scroll our form here because it's within a scroll view. We were able to add a listener to our button and say, please show me something whenever this button is clicked. We also saw a few of the patterns that are considered good practices in writing code all over. It doesn't matter if it's just Java or C# or the languages similar to this one.